Pay attention to the girl in this video. On January 26, 2017, Cleveland police began retracing the steps of 14-year-old Alianna DeFreeze, last seen waiting for her bus to school. Minutes later, they reviewed security footage from the first bus. At 6:41 a.m., a girl boarded, wearing a blue headscarf and her school uniform. She walked down the aisle, unaware of the danger that may be nearby. At 6:46 a.m., a young man boarded the bus. He smiled, spoke briefly with Aliana, and they sat together. To anyone watching, it seemed harmless, but as the bus rolled down the street, Aliana eventually got off, alone, 2 stops before her school. The footage shifted to a camera on Fuller Avenue. It was grainy, snow beginning to fall, but there she was, a small figure walking along the sidewalk. And then, a man appeared, watching, waiting. Aliana paused. She sensed that something was off. Seconds later, he approached.
It is so chilling watching that surveillance video because you're like, oh man, this is about to be terrible.
Reviewing the video, detectives sensed that this meeting was far from accidental. Someone was hunting their prey.
As time goes on, there is a larger chance that something's wrong, that they were hurt or injured or kidnapped or worse.
What unfolded in the next moments would lead them to a crime so horrifying they would never forget it.
Cleveland 911 dispatcher Milan, good evening. Please fire ambulance. I just want to report a missing child. How old is the child? 14.
Police are saying that Aliana DeFreeze was last seen getting off of a bus near 93rd and Kinsman Thursday morning, but since then, no signs of her.
Aliana DeFreeze was a joyful and loving 14-year-old who lived in Cleveland, Ohio, and attended E-Prep and Village Prep Woodlands Hills as a 7th grader. She loved school and eagerly took the RTA bus each morning. Aliana had a playful, childlike spirit and embraced her innocence. She enjoyed playing with dolls and cherished her time with family.
She was 14, but she was still a child.
She was close to her father and her stepmother, Witona, who had been part of her life since she was 3. Aliana's bright personality shone in small, meaningful moments, like when she excitedly prepared for the school father-daughter dance, insisting she wanted to look like a princess for her dad, revealing her warm heart and the joy she found in simple pleasures. Her parents, who had always remained united despite living in separate homes, shared a close bond in raising her. Aliana split her time between her stepmother, Witona, and her birth mother, Dinesha, spending weekends filled with family routines and laughter. On Sunday evening, as usual, Witona drove Aliana back to Dinesha's home so she could prepare for the school week. They exchanged their usual I love you, expecting to see each other again the next weekend.
She gave me a kiss and she said, I'll see you next weekend.
4 days later, everything changed. On January 26, 2017, Witona received a call from Dinesha asking if Aliana had been picked up from school. Aliana had never returned home. Panic set in immediately. Dinesha hung up and dialed 911 to report her daughter missing.
Cleveland 911 dispatcher Milan, good evening. Please fire ambulance. I just want to report a missing child. How old is the child? 14.
She explained that she had put Aliana on the RTA bus that morning, but the girl never arrived at school.
Did she never made it to school this morning at all? No. Has she ever done this before? No. She's never ran away before, did this, nothing like this before? No. Okay. She's trying to get his own car over to you now. Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, bye-bye.
With a juvenile missing person case, investigators knew time was critical. A detective contacted Aliana's school and spoke with the principal. He confirmed that Aliana was a punctual student who never skipped class or arrived late. Her sudden disappearance didn't match her character, and her family immediately sensed danger. Officers began canvassing the neighborhood, checking common hangout spots, fast food places, alleyways, and familiar corners where local kids gathered. As daylight faded and temperatures dropped, the urgency intensified. More officers were called in to search abandoned houses, storefronts, and any location a young girl could hide or be hidden. Snow began to fall, adding another layer of worry.
As time goes on, there is a larger chance that something's wrong, that they were hurt or injured or kidnapped or worse.
Refusing to wait at home, Aliana's family mobilized friends and relatives, canvassing the area and covering the streets with missing posters. They searched relentlessly, driven by fear and hope. By 7 p.m., over 12 hours had passed since she was last seen. Night set in. The temperature dropped towards zero, and the thought of Aliana alone in the freezing January cold grew unbearable. Back at the station, investigators attempted to trace Aliana's phone, but it had been switched off since the previous day. They went through her call logs, messages, and social media activity, but nothing suggested she had planned to disappear. Hospitals were contacted, yet no unidentified patient matched their description. With no immediate progress, investigators returned to the last confirmed sighting.
When you're looking for a missing person and you don't have any success right off the bat, you go back to square one. We know that the last place that anybody saw Aliana was on an RTA bus.
Since she took 2 buses every morning, detectives requested footage from both. By the next morning, more than 24 hours after she vanished, the first recording became available. They cued the timestamp to around 6:30 a.m., the time her mother said she boarded. The footage showed a girl in a blue headscarf, black coat, and school uniform, matching Aliana's description. When the bus lights briefly illuminated the interior, she turned toward the camera, allowing detectives to positively identify her. Up to that moment, she appeared calm and unharmed. At 6:46 a.m., the bus stopped again and a young male boarded. He exchanged a few words with Aliana, and the two sat together.
They're smiling, they're laughing, they seem like friends. Aliana doesn't appear to be in any danger. Maybe she had a boyfriend that the mother was unaware of. Maybe they got off the bus together and played hooky or something like that.
There were no signs of distress, leading investigators to consider the possibility that she might have willingly left the route with someone she knew. By 6:50 a.m., Aliana stood and walked toward the front of the bus. Surveillance from the front exit camera showed her stepping off alone at the next stop. The boy remained seated as the bus pulled away. Aliana disappeared from view, now just half a mile from her school, yet she never arrived.
It's not a criminal matter as of yet. This is just a missing person, but everybody's trying to get one step ahead of the game.
However, the more time passed without a trace of Aliana, the more the case shifted from a simple missing person to a potential crime. Detectives pulled footage from the exterior bus camera, hoping to determine where she went after stepping off. The video showed Aliana walking in the direction of the bus route, moving along the sidewalk and crossing the street just as the bus drove out of frame. Investigators caught one last glimpse of her standing at the corner of East 93rd and Kinsman, where she usually transferred to her second bus. The area was known for high crime rates and frequent homicides, making it a dangerous route for a young girl traveling alone. Detectives replayed the footage repeatedly, scrutinizing every person who appeared near her.
They do identify a man in a white coat who kind of looks like he may be following her as she crosses the street.
He had also been on the bus, seated directly behind her. Investigators began to consider him a possible person of interest and focused on tracking his movements. The next step was clear. They needed to find out if Aliana ever made it to her second bus, and whether the man in the white jacket followed her there. Out on the freezing streets of Cleveland, the search for Aliana intensified. Volunteers and police officers formed lines, moving through blizzard conditions, determined to cover every inch of the area. Her family pushed forward relentlessly, driven by the fear that they had failed to protect her. With temperatures dropping and snow piling up, urgency grew. Police issued a public appeal, and local news stations broadcast the story.
Police are saying that Aliana DeFreeze was last seen getting off of a bus near 93rd and Kinsman Thursday morning, but since then, no signs of her.
Residents in the neighborhood reacted with fear. The area had seen previous cases of murdered women, and the community began to worry that Aliana might have met a similar fate. Because, as detectives knew all too well, no one just vanished without a trace. At the police station, footage from the second bus finally arrived. Investigators scanned it urgently and confirmed that Aliana had boarded her usual transfer. They focused on the man in the white jacket from the earlier footage, but he did not appear on the bus. With no further link to Aliana, he was ruled out as a suspect. The footage then revealed something unusual. Aliana did not ride to her normal stop near the school. Instead, she stepped off early at the corner of East 93rd and Bessemer. Detectives questioned her family and friends, but no one knew of any reason she would get off the bus at that location. The boys seen speaking with her earlier insisted she had planned to go straight to school. With no new information, investigators shifted their focus to the area surrounding that bus stop. Officers conducted a grid search, sweeping the streets for any trace of the missing girl. Just 2 blocks from where she stepped off, a line of abandoned buildings stood in decay. 2 uniformed officers entered a derelict house on Fuller Avenue. The structure was boarded up and without electricity, forcing them into pitch-black rooms. A growing sense of dread followed them inside. Something was wrong.
You just have this sinking feeling in your stomach.
As officers moved deeper into the abandoned house, they noticed a trail of blood leading across the floor of one room. Following it into the next, they found scattered clothing and personal items, along with several tools smeared with blood. The officers pressed further, and in the dim, boarded-up room, they discovered the body of a young girl. The scene was horrifying. Tools and objects that had caused the wounds lay nearby, and the sheer amount of blood and violence made it one of the most disturbing cases the officers had encountered. At first, the body was unidentifiable, the features too damaged to confirm who she was. Based on the clothing and personal effects, investigators believed it was Aliana, but they awaited official confirmation from the medical examiner before notifying the family. Word spread quickly, and volunteers alerted them. Within their hearts, Aliana's parents knew the truth. An autopsy later confirmed it. The body belonged to 14-year-old Aliana DeFreeze. Her father grappled with the reality. Somebody had killed his daughter. Their beautiful, precious child was gone.
Somebody killed my daughter. I'm just telling myself, somebody actually killed my freaking daughter. Well, I was enraged. Our precious, beautiful Aliana was no more.
At the crime scene, forensic investigators began their work. With the body recovered, focus shifted from finding Aliana to identifying her killer. The team photographed the scene, collected DNA, blood samples, fingerprints, and documented every piece of physical evidence to be sent to the crime lab for analysis. These materials could point to a suspect, but detectives would not wait for results to act. Officers were immediately deployed across the neighborhood, searching for anyone who might be responsible. Signs warning of video surveillance indicated potential leads, and detectives identified a church at the corner of Fuller and 93rd with exterior cameras pointing toward the street where Aliana's body had been found. Copies of the footage were retrieved and brought to the station in hopes of capturing evidence of the killer in action. Detectives cued the church surveillance at 6:53 a.m., the time Aliana got off her second bus at the wrong stop. They needed to determine if she had planned to meet someone. The video was grainy, and for several minutes, the streets appeared empty. At 7:13 a.m., a short figure appeared walking down the street. Comparing the footage to bus recordings, detectives identified the figure as Aliana, her distinctive backpack visible despite the snowfall. As she neared the corner, a man appeared. Aliana hesitated, stepping back, whether from something he said or an instinctive sense of danger. It was clear this encounter was not planned.
It is so chilling watching that surveillance video because you're like, oh man, this is about to be terrible.
Detectives zoomed in on the man, but heavy snowfall obscured the view. His brief interaction with Aliana appeared suspicious. Moments later, Aliana walked out of frame, and seconds after, the man followed. Detectives switched to the second camera overlooking a nearby parking lot. At the very top edge of the frame, they caught a glimpse of movement, Aliana's legs as she stepped into view. She reached the corner, where the man in the footage approached her. Then both figures slipped out of frame, swallowed by the edge of the screen. At 7:19 a.m., another camera picked them up farther down Fuller Avenue. Though the snow distorted the image, it was clear enough. 2 figures moving together in the direction of the abandoned house where her body would later be found. The smaller silhouette walked ahead while the larger figure hovered close, steering her forward. Moments later, they vanished off screen. That was the last known image of 14-year-old Aliana alive, and detectives knew they had just witnessed her abduction in real time. Investigators then scrubbed back through the earlier footage. Around 5 a.m., when the streets were still empty and the snow hadn't started to fall, a man with a shaved head was seen slowly pacing the block. He drifted in and out of frame, circling the same stretch of sidewalk again and again with no clear destination. Minutes before Aliana appeared on camera, he returned once more, pacing with the same cold patience, like someone waiting for prey. Police were convinced they were watching her killer stalking for a victim. Reports soon came in from other women who had been approached by a man matching the same description in the area. Police feared they were dealing with a repeat offender, someone already known to the system. With no identity yet confirmed, detectives began pulling files, scanning through the records of violent repeat offenders, desperate to match a face to the blurry figure in the snow. Until DNA results came back, this was their best hope. Aliana's death had been vicious and deliberate. They knew a man capable of that kind of brutality would not stop, not unless they stopped him first.
Aliana's manner of death was grotesque and violent. Guys like that, they just belong in prison, and that's the only place for them to keep everybody else safe.
As detectives closed in on their suspect, the community gathered near the abandoned house where Aliana had been found. Grief filled the street as neighbors and volunteers stood in silence. For her parents, returning to that place was unbearable. The reality settled in. Her room would remain empty, her laughter gone forever.
Now it's accepting the fact that my daughter's not here. It's accepting the fact that that room will be empty. Her bedroom will be empty. We won't hear her laughing and all that good stuff.
Back at the police department, investigators finally made a breakthrough. They identified 44-year-old Christopher Whitaker, a registered sex offender with a violent past. In 2005, he had been convicted of assaulting a woman and stabbing her in the neck. His arrest photo matched the man captured pacing outside the church just before Aliana's abduction. Moments later, DNA results confirmed the match.
Now, with the video and the DNA, everything kind of comes together. The detectives realized that it's Christopher Whitaker, who they saw pacing outside the church, Christopher Whitaker, who approached Aliana on the street corner, and Christopher Whitaker, who ushers her down the street to the house where her body was found.
With Whitaker identified, the case was handed over to the U.S. Marshals Northern Ohio Violent Fugitive Task Force, a unit dedicated to tracking down the most dangerous criminals. This time, they knew they were hunting someone capable of extreme violence.
I wanted to personally see him go to jail for the horrendous acts that he committed on that girl.
The Marshals moved fast, heading straight to Whitaker's last known address. Weapons ready, they approached the door, fully aware that a killer could be waiting on the other side. When the door finally opened, they came face to face with a massive man, towering in the doorway, Christopher Whitaker. When officers finally closed in and restrained him, they were struck by his sheer physical presence. His wrists were unnaturally large, thick with muscle, and standard-issue cuffs barely locked into place, clicking only a couple of times before tightening against his skin. In that moment, the contrast was impossible to ignore. This was a man of considerable strength, a towering figure built for force, and he had chosen as his victim a 14-year-old girl, slight and defenseless. The image of that imbalance lingered in the investigators' minds. To them, it felt as though they had laid hands on something far darker than a suspect, something monstrous.
It sickens me to think of how big of a man this guy was and how little she was and what he did to her.
Christopher Whitaker was arrested and taken to the homicide unit. The moment he was brought in, it was clear he understood that the hunt was over. He tried to distance himself from the crime, initially denying any involvement. When confronted with DNA results and the surveillance footage, his resistance began to fracture. Piece by piece, he conceded details, admitting to being at the scene, admitting to handling tools later recovered at the abandoned house. With enough evidence to secure a conviction, he was formally charged with aggravated murder. Whitaker entered a plea of not guilty, forcing the details of that January morning into the courtroom. At 6:41 a.m., 14-year-old Aliana DeFreeze boarded her first bus. She transferred shortly after and continued towards school, but at 6:53 a.m., she stepped off the bus 2 stops early. There was no explanation. The area was still dark, and investigators believed she might have been disoriented, stepping into a situation she never had a chance to understand. It was the worst possible moment. A confused girl walked through a quiet neighborhood, unaware that a predator was already waiting.
The abandoned houses are terrible for a neighborhood. It's a great place to take somebody if you're gonna try and kidnap them.
Whitaker, a large and imposing figure, approached her. For a child her size, his presence alone would have been overwhelming. He led Aliana toward one of those abandoned properties. Inside, he tortured and murdered her. The brutality of the crime was so severe that her remains had to be identified through dental records.
That her parents had to use her dental records to identify her. I mean, it was just cruel. It was cruel and evil. There was no other word for it.
On February 13th, 2018, a jury found Christopher Whitaker guilty of the kidnapping and murder of 14-year-old Aliana DeFreeze. He was sentenced to death, a punishment many felt barely matched the cruelty of his crime. Though he appealed the sentence, his guilt was undeniable. For her father, time stopped. In his memory, she remained frozen at 14, forever a bright girl on her way to school.
She's gonna be 14 in my mind forever. I don't know what a 21-year-old Holly looks like. I don't know what a married Aliana looks like, but she wouldn't want us to be sad. She wouldn't want us to be sad.
In her memory, they founded an organization dedicated to protecting children who rely on public transit, working to provide safe transportation and clear abandoned structures like the one she was taken to. Through this, they turned tragedy into purpose, a warning and a mission to ensure no other child disappears into the dark unnoticed.
Don't ever think that it can't happen to you, because it can. You never know who's watching. Somebody can just take them just that fast and you don't even know it. You'll turn around and they'll be gone.